Hi, I'm 𝐂𝐚𝐫.
Hi, I'm Joseph.
So in today's episode, we'll have Joseph here, who's a practicing lawyer for 5 years now, who specializes in the area of esports. We'll have him here today to discuss on the topic of what exactly does an esports lawyer do. As an introduction, could you tell us how did you come to this area of law then?
So esports is a new industry, basically, right? Basically what it means is electronic games played in a competitive environment. Okay, so for example, the old traditional sports, you have the football, basketball, right? In this new generation, more people are playing video games, more people are playing computer games. So what happened is that the industry grew to a state where they start to play competitively. Right. So how I got into the space is because I'm a gamer myself. I play games all the time. So I thought, why not just get into the space where I'm also a lawyer as a profession, and then I get into the space because I like play games. So that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Then, as you said, this is a new up and coming area of law. So can you describe to us what exactly should come in mind when a person discusses about esports?
So esports is not a law on its own. Esports law is encompasses many areas of law. So for example, when it comes to the games itself, there's trademark. So trademark, IP, intellectual property law comes into play. When you want to organize some tournaments, it becomes a contractual law. Right. When it comes to big organizations acquiring players to play under their name, that becomes employment law. Right. So it encompasses all sorts of areas of law, and then we make it to become an esports law. But it's still growing. The industry is still growing, so there's much area to improve now. Yeah.
Oh, so when it's like this, when there's no specific area of law, so you mean to say that, let's say in a tournament there's your contract law, so if one of the parties were to be in breach of that contract, they'll go to the sessions court lah.
Yeah, they go to the normal forum, the normal forum, the Magistrates Court, Sessions Court, High Court. We don't have an esports court yet. I believe in Perak, if I'm not mistaken, there's an esports tribunal. Yeah, I believe so, but I do need to check on that. Yeah.
I see. Then so it's the normal pathway. There's no specific authority for it.
In Malaysia, there is this federation called the Malaysian eSports Federation. So what they do is that it's a governing body that governs the entire esports landscape and industry in Malaysia. Right. So you have the usual, the president, vice presidents, and then you have the councils. And then what they do is that this federation works with the government, and they will try their best to improve the landscape of esports in Malaysia. So we do have a governing body right there. So it's a progress. Yeah.
Then, having experienced 5 years, in your opinion, how is the market conditions of this area then like?
So it's still growing. Technically I've only been interested and got into esports law maybe about 2 years ago. Right. When I start off practice, I was not in esports at all. I was doing something else. But then over time, as I start to practice, I realized that why not take advantage of me being a gamer and me being a lawyer, then I enter esports law. So that was just about 2 years ago. And when I first entered the industry, so to speak, when I first start to know people, start to talk about esports law, start to talk with esports players, esports stakeholders, there's not much interest in understanding their legal rights. So what happens is that when teams they compete in a tournament, so for example, if they win first prize, right, where the first prize is 1,000 ringgit, the issue becomes the organizer don't pay the teams their prize winning. So that was a problem. That was a big problem about 2 years ago, where tournament organizers they just refused to pay the teams, the winning teams, their money. And at that time, these teams they don't really understand their legal rights. They don't understand what sort of legal recourse that they have. But since then, I see there's significant improvement. There's a significant improvement, and there has been driving factors by different people in advocating that even in the esports industry where people play games for a living, they also start to slowly understand of their legal rights. So the industry is still growing, and more still needs to be done. But it's getting there.
Oh, that's really interesting. When you speak of this, what work do you usually do then, like at a typical day work?
Okay, so the work that we've been doing is I've done players agreement. So for example, a team wants to sign this player, right? Wants to sign this player play under the team's banner, team's name. So I worked with drafting the players agreement to make sure that both sides' rights and obligations are intact. At least they're all confined in that players agreement. Before that, there was no such players agreement. Everything is just talk, like verbal. This team owner will come to the player and say, hey, why don't you play for my team? I promise to pay you 500 ringgit per month, etc. etc. But if you don't have it down in writing, in black and white, then all you have is he say, she say, right? Verbal evidence, right? Which is not so good. So I've done that. I've done also sponsorships agreement. So sponsorship agreement works in a way that if let's say the team is strong enough and they are so popular, right? A lot of fans, they have a lot of fan base everywhere. So the sponsors will approach these teams and then stick their sponsor logo in the team jersey, team Facebook page, etc. So those kind of agreement also preferably require a lawyer to go through to make sure all the rights and obligations are there. So I've done that as well. But most of the time, as this industry is still developing, they are mainly focusing on improving their computer gaming skills rather than thinking about their legal rights. So it's still a lot to educate, but we're slowly getting there. It's different. In Malaysia, landscape is very different in the US. In the US and in Europe, it's absolutely established. In the US, there are a few law firms specializing in esports only, right? So they open up this law firm boutique, and then all they do is esports work, and they can survive. But in Malaysia, still a bit difficult. But we're getting there.
Then speaking of all this, like since it's a progressing area, what challenges have you faced then?
Well, so the challenge is education, right? When it comes to speaking to the esports people, esports stakeholders, most of them they don't really like to spend money to pay lawyers to do this legal drafting work, right? Which is understandable. They want to save this money for something else, to buy a better computer or something, right? But it's all good when it's a honeymoon period where people promise, I will do this for you, I'll do this for you, right? It's all good. But when it comes to what happens if someone didn't honor their promise and then you don't have an agreement in place, or you get an agreement from the internet and then it's not good agreement, right? So that is the problem, and they don't realize this. Sometimes they don't realize the legal implication, and that is the challenge in Malaysia, at least, where we still need to educate these people that as much as your gaming skills is important, it's also equally important to preserve your legal rights by way of agreement or by way of any form.
Have you specifically done anything to like you said that it lacks awareness, right? So have you done anything to like?
Yeah, so I've attended events, and actually there are a couple of actually there's one lawyer, 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐿𝑜𝑦, right? 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐿𝑜𝑦 is a lawyer. He's a sports lawyer, but I see that he's also advocating a lot on esports law, right? So it's really credit to him where he's really taking the initiative to organize seminars, online seminars. He's speaking to esports stakeholders to raise awareness about their legal rights, etc. Right, and I've just been supporting him and watching his videos and seminars lah. But I know I should do more. But we'll see.
Alright.
Maybe when I have time. Yeah.
And what have been the highlights of your career then? Like, I understand it's only 2 years, right? But have there been any milestones?
Yeah, the milestones is the one esports organization actually approaching me to ask them to draft out the agreement.
Oh.
That is the milestone because that is the first esports work that I had done, and I was pretty proud and happy about it because one, it's a recognition that someone approached me because they know that I probably understand the esports industry better than other lawyers. And two, that is the very first esports related work that I've done. So that is something that I cherish lah.
Oh, how recent was that?
That was about 1 year ago, I think.
Oh.
About 1 year ago lah. Yeah, can't remember exactly when. Yeah. I mean, I've only been doing it for about 2 years lah. Yeah.
Then, like coming to this, like, what's your personal definition of success then when you
personal definition of success in the esports industry, or
like in your current phase of life, like you only entered 2 years in esports, right? And you currently have your own firm, right? Like, what's your definition of success for right in this current phase?
I think the definition of success would be getting the esports industry to a level that is equivalent to maybe the US or Japan or Korea. They are massive industry in esports in those countries, and if Malaysia can strive to become that, and if I can somehow contribute to it, then that would be something that I would deem it as a success. In Malaysia, the esports, rather in Southeast Asia, Malaysia is one of those countries that are actively growing the esports industry, and so we hope that this movement continues for Malaysia to be the esports hub for Southeast Asia at least. Yeah, that's our goal.
Then, like, when you speak of this, right, do you understand? You told me like how this 𝐸𝐿 also having his own webinar, contacting the esports stakeholders and so on. And what about you? Do you have your personal ideas on how to contribute to this growth, this success of growth you wanted?
I suppose how to really raise awareness is to get down to the roots, right? Speaking to the players, speaking to these up and coming players, these 16-year-old, 17-year-old, they are playing the games for fun but also winning. I suppose that would be a good avenue to reach out to, so that since young they understand their legal rights as well, because when you're 16, 17 years old, when you're being offered big money to move somewhere or to play for someone, sometimes you disregard your legal rights and obligations as well. That I hope that if I get the opportunity, I'll be able to speak to them about them needing to understand some legal consequences also if they choose to go whichever path that they want to. Yeah.
Then when going on from this youth perspective, right, would you ever consider like how some politicians like 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗦𝗁, who's in youth and very advocative of esports, will you ever ever come up with a platform like his to work together and promote esports?
Oh, of course. I mean, ideally, I think 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗦𝗁 I really have to give credit to him as well for coming up with an esports plan last year, where he announced a 5 years esports plan for Malaysia. I really got to give some comments, kudos to him really, because he really took the time to understand and do the research and then come up with a plan. Of course, meeting with politicians or with even the Malaysian Esports Federation's personnel, coming together to discuss about improving the esports landscape. Of course, that will be something I hope to do in the future. Yeah.
I guess we'll move on to our last and final question then.
Sure.
As someone who practices in this area for already 2 years, what advice will you give to aspiring lawyers and law students who are keen on this area of law, esports?
Getting in this space?
Yeah.
Well, first, I think it's maybe some people's advice is different, but my advice is this: that you must understand the game. Okay, you must play some games at least, right? You must be a gamer, so to speak. Because if you don't understand the games, sometimes there are legal things that are very different in esports compared to any other law. So if you play a game, then you know that there are certain things there are certain things that you should that comes immediately to your head because you are a gamer. So that's my advice I think you gotta play more games and then it's an excuse also
Okay, that's cool. Like, oh, to use you're the first one that advice. Play more games.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll give myself the excuse also.
Alright, that comes the end of our interview. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.